Have you ever had something happen and before you really could even think about it, you've already reacted? Maybe somebody said something that made you angry. Maybe somebody treated you unfairly. Maybe you got a message and before your brain could even register what was happening, your thumbs are already flying. You know that feeling? Your heart starts beating a little faster. Your chest gets tight. Suddenly, you have a whole lot to say and you have to say it right now. Now, I've been there. More times than I'd like to admit. And I want to be completely honest with you right from the start. I'm not sitting here because I've mastered this, because I haven't. I still get angry. I still get frustrated. And there are absolutely times when I react in the heat of the moment. Sometimes I say something while I'm still angry. Sometimes I respond before I really had time to think. Sometimes I even know while it's happening, this probably isn't going to turn out very well. But I do it anyway. Because I'm human. The difference is, over the years, I've learned that when I give myself some space, I usually make a much better decision. Because when I look back at the times I've made my own problems worse, anger and frustration were almost always somewhere inside of that story. Not because I was wrong to be upset. Sometimes I had every right to be upset. Sometimes something was totally unfair. Sometimes things really need to be addressed. The problem wasn't the feeling. The problem was the choice I made while I was upset. Welcome back to Myths and Mayhem, the show where gods create problems, kings make them worse, and heroes discover their limits, because buried beneath every ancient myth is a very modern human truth. In this week's story, Heracles, the demigod who spent most of his life responding to obstacles the exact same way. Something gets in your way, hit it. Something attacks you, hit it harder. Something refuses to cooperate, apparently get a larger object. Except the Erymanthian Boar didn't work that way. Heracles charged in on instinct and ended up stuck chest deep in a snowdrift while the boar literally just walked away. Heracles had to stop. He had to look around. He had to actually look at the mountain. And only when he stopped rushing did he realize that the terrain could actually help him in solving this problem. He had to learn something that took me years to figure out in my own life. We don't get to choose what happens to us. We choose our actions, not our circumstances. Now, I don't always get this right, but I've gotten a lot better at creating some distance between what happens and what I do about it. I use what I call the 30-minute rule. When I'm angry, when I'm frustrated, when something happens and I feel that overwhelming urge to respond immediately, I try to hit pause. And I really want to emphasize that word, try, because I still mess up. Sometimes I still hit send. Sometimes I still say something hard. Sometimes I react in the moment, and only when I reflect on it later do I think, yeah, I probably should have waited. The 30-minute rule didn't magically turn me into a person who is calm and never loses his cool. It just gave me a tool for the times I remember to use it. And when I do use it, I'll open a new document, but I won't necessarily sit there and type everything out. I'll often talk it out because my mouth can move a whole lot faster than my fingers can type. So I verbally transcribe what I'm feeling, the frustration, the anger, whatever is running through my head, and I let it be raw. I don't try to make it sound polite. I don't try to make it sound mature. I don't try to make myself sound reasonable. If I'm furious, I say I'm furious. If I think something is completely unfair, if I've gotten 10 different things running through my head, I get them all out. Because sometimes you just need to get the storm out of your head. And then I walk away for at least 30 minutes. That's it. 30 minutes. And I don't hover over the document. I don't keep checking my phone. I don't sit there and reread every 2 minutes. I walk away. The goal isn't to magically make the anger disappear. Sometimes I come back 30 minutes later and I'm still really upset, and that's okay. The point isn't to pretend that you don't feel anything. The point is to give that emotion room to breathe. Because it's a massive difference between feeling something and acting on it. So after 30 minutes, I sit back and read through that transcription. And this is where the important part happens. Sometimes I feel exactly the same way, and if I do, I take it seriously. Maybe a line was crossed. Maybe a difficult conversation actually needs to happen. Maybe something really does need to change. I'm not going to sweep it under the rug because I had 30 minutes to calm down. The difference is now my brain is driving, not my anger. Other times I read through what I said 30 minutes earlier and I think, wow, I was really worked up. And I said some things in there that I really didn't mean. So I edit them. I change the wording. I take out the parts that were just frustration. Sometimes I completely rewrite what I was going to say. And sometimes I realize that I don't need to say anything at all. And that's an important distinction because the 30-minute rule isn't about ignoring your emotions. It's not about pretending that you're fine when you're not. And it's definitely not about letting people walk all over you. And it isn't about becoming some perfectly calm person who never loses their temper, because I haven't become that person yet. The goal is much simpler. Don't let a temporary emotion make a permanent decision for you. Because anger can be useful. Frustration can also be useful. Those feelings can tell us things, but I've learned to think about those feelings a little differently. Feelings are information. They're not instructions. Just because you feel angry doesn't mean you have to send the message. Just because you feel frustrated doesn't mean you have to say the thing you were thinking. Just because you feel like you have to fix everything right this second doesn't mean you actually do. Sometimes you can just wait. And that's what I think Heracles finally starts learning with the boar. He doesn't become weaker when he stops charging. He becomes smarter. He doesn't run away. He doesn't give up. He simply stops long enough to understand the problem. And once he does, the obstacle becomes part of the solution. The mountain isn't something he has to defeat. It's something he could use. I think life can work that way too. Sometimes we see a problem and immediately start pushing against it. We want to fix it. We want to win. We want to prove our point. We want the other person to understand why we're right. We want everything to go back to normal right now. But sometimes the smartest thing you can do is to give the situation room to breathe. Maybe the answer becomes clearer. Maybe you realize you misunderstood something. Maybe you realize that the other person was wrong. Maybe you realize that you were wrong. Maybe you realize that it's not worth fighting for in the first place. And that's not weakness, that's growth. Because strength isn't always about how much force you can use. Sometimes strength is knowing when force isn't the answer. And I think one of the things that is most interesting about Heracles' journey is that he's not becoming stronger, he's becoming more complete. The lion gave him courage. The Hydra gave him strategy. The Golden Hind gave him patience. The Erymanthian Boar gave him restraint. And maybe that's what growing up really is. You don't suddenly become someone who never gets angry. You don't become somebody who never makes mistakes. You learn what tools you can use when those moments come. Sometimes you need courage. Sometimes you need patience. Sometimes you need to think strategically. And sometimes you need to do absolutely nothing until your emotions have had time to breathe. And that's why I keep coming back to the 30-minute rule. Not because I've mastered it, I haven't. I still have moments where I react way too quickly. I still have moments where I get angry. I still have moments where I say something that later I wish I had handled completely differently. Because I've learned something important. I don't have to trust my first reaction. I can listen to it. I can understand why I'm feeling it. And I can get it out of my head without immediately putting it onto somebody else. And when I can give myself 30 minutes before I decide what I actually want to do with it. So maybe try it yourself. The next time something happens and you feel your heat rising, don't pretend you aren't angry. Don't pretend you aren't frustrated. Open a document, talk it out, get it all out, be honest, and then walk away. Give yourself 30 minutes. Come back, read it with clear eyes. And if it's true, handle it. If it's something that needs to be said, say it. If it's something that needs to be changed, change it. But if you read it and realize I didn't actually mean what I said, that's okay too. Edit it, change it, or let it go. Because you don't have to make your next move at the exact same speed that your anger made its first one. Remember, we don't choose what happens to us. We only get to choose how we react to it. We choose our actions, not our circumstances. I'm still learning that too. I still mess up. But every time I remember to stop, every time I give myself that 30 minutes, I'm giving myself another chance to choose my response instead of letting my emotions choose for me. And maybe that's what real strength actually is. Not just charging forward, but knowing when to step back. Until next time, stay curious, stay legendary, and remember, sometimes the strongest move you can make is the one that you make 30 minutes later. See you next time.
And if you're enjoying Myths and Mayhem, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.